If you look at the curve of companies at different stages, a lot of companies obviously in seed and Series A stage. At that
Hmm.
level, they seem to not have the ability to be bold and different in what they do. There's a real gap in the market right now for companies to come out and just talk very plain language of what they do and who they do it
Hmm.
for.
Welcome to Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber to better understand their audience and turn them into loyal customers. Every week, Dani Woolf has brutally honest conversations with busy tech buyers about what really motivates them, the things they hate that vendors do, and what you can do about it. Get access to practical information on how to build authentic relationships with your audience. Listen to and talk with your buyers, and apply real customer insights to your strategies and tactics. You owe it to the world to unmute your mic. Are you ready?
All right. Welcome to another episode of Audience First. As always, we're bringing on special guests to the podcast. And today is a very, very cool dude who's joining me. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Danny, thank you so much. I'm kind of excited about this. This is good format. I love your format. I love what you're doing with Audience First, and I'm intrigued to see which ways our conversation goes.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad I insisted that we kind of collaborate and talk about all the good things. I think this is going to be a really valuable episode for our audience here. But before we dig in, how about you tell us who are you, what do you do, and why the hell do you do it?
Yeah. So my name is Andrew Monaghan. I am a long time cybersecurity salesperson. In fact, I sold my first cybersecurity product in 1998, believe it or not. Before it was called cybersecurity, in fact, it was called InfoSec back in those days.
Wow.
And since then, my whole career has been in some version of cybersecurity selling. I was a seller for a while. I ran some sales teams, and for the past while, I've been helping sales teams succeed. So right now, I'm the founder of my own consulting training business where I go in and work with cybersecurity sales teams on helping them sell more faster.
Sell faster. That is like music to anyone's ears in this industry, right? But it hasn't been a walk in the park for us. I feel, especially recently, and we kind of talked about this before we hit the big red button to record and go live here. Why do you've been in this industry for a while? Why do you think it's so hard for us in this space to sell, but not only to sell? So I want to kind of split it into two directions. There's the go to market side, but also for the security side. Do you have any insight on that for us today?
Well, if you go back to 1998, I don't know the right number, but maybe there was 30 companies in cybersecurity. I don't know, 50. I don't know what the right number is, but it's pretty small. And
Mhm.
it seemed to grow and grow. And I remember in the early 2000s, there was just some projection that, the industry was going to be over $1 billion of value, right? I was like, really? Could it really be that big? And now you fast forward to today and you look at Richard Steenan IT Harvest dashboard, 3,700 vendors in there. So there's 3,700 vendors competing to get the attention of a group of people that we believe are the buyers of our stuff, right? And in that number of 3,700, there's so many overlapping areas about, well, does it do this? And everyone's trying to find a little new thing, right? They're different way of doing something. And often the different way means let me spend a little bit over this direction or a little bit over that direction. So to sit there and try and capture the attention of someone and in a way that's got clarity and people remember and you don't sound like you're throwing buzzwords at them all the time. It's really hard to do. It really is hard to do. And I feel for the go-to-market teams that are out there, and they are, with the best intentions of the world, they believe in what they're doing, and they're just trying to find their unique way of describing that. So we've got this whole confusion and attention battle going on. And unfortunately, what I've seen happen, and maybe you've seen this as well, is when things are a little bit tough, the reaction from leadership is, try harder and do more. So what does that mean? Well, let's do more emails and more calls and more LinkedIn messages, more. And not enough probably is spent on, well, we try to do things a little bit differently. and try and get our unfair share of attention and market share by doing things a little bit differently. I think there's one thing that's true. I think the other thing that's happened as well recently, and I hear this a lot from the companies that I work with and talk to a lot, is that the scrutiny on cybersecurity purchases and many purchases has gone up, right? So what was, I wouldn't say it was ever easy, but what was easier 3, 5, 10 years ago, where we've allocated security a budget and you're buying the right thing, right? It wasn't rubber stamping, but it wasn't deep dive diligence into why we're buying different elements of cybersecurity because the company needs to be careful. I think that's what's happening right now. People who tend to have finance in their title, whether it's in the finance function or inside IT or inside security, are asking the really tough questions. Can we put this off 6 months?
Yeah.
Is there an alternative? Is there, this is a great, you love this one, but what's the 50% cost alternative with, 75% of the value or the functionality? And, or do we have something right now that we could maybe, extend out a little bit, add on a little bit to try and do something? But I think all these things are coming together to make it really tough, both for the vendors, but also the practitioners to try and make sense of it all. I just kind of sit there going, if I was in their shoes, how on earth would I try and make sense of all this stuff? 'Cause there's so much coming at them.
Well, so this is I love that you mentioned that. And this is a nice segue kind of to this next question. How do we, as go-to-market teams and as vendors, make it easier for uh, the practitioners and the buyers?
Um, I think the obvious first step that unfortunately not enough people do is to really understand through something like audience first or their own due diligence, what the heck do people care about? What are their views
Yeah.
on all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
We there is too often, I think, some ivory tower thinking about what's needed and the best way to convey what's needed without actually going to talk to the people that matter. And that's the potential customers out there. So I think that's an obvious first step to do. I think another thing I'll tell you is I think that if you look at the curve of companies at different stages, a lot of companies obviously in seed and Series A stage. At that
Hmm.
level, they seem to not have the ability to be bold and different in what they do. Someone once described it to me very accurately as, you can tell a Series A company because they got a Series A blue on their website.
Hmm.
And, it's just, different variations of blue and, it all kind of melds into one and they put some pretty bland messaging up there, unfortunately. And, it kind of just blends into the other 1,000 companies that are at that stage. So I think, just be a little bit bold about it. Just do things a little differently. And obviously the classic example right now is Wiz. Everything they do seems to be different, right? But you don't
Yep.
have to be a powerhouse of Wiz to go and do this.
Yep.
Whether it's your name, how you project yourself, how you describe yourself. I think there's a real gap in the market right now for companies to come out and just talk very plain language of what they do and who they do it
Hmm.
for. So I don't know. These are
Right.
probably some places to start anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So that's a great place to start. But how do you tie that into some kind of selling framework? And what is a selling framework that you rely on to sell fast, as you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I think. Well, what I do with my clients right now and the companies that I talk to is we talk about um, the business value of what they provide. Now, I want to be clear about what that means. I think most companies, most sales teams, most marketing teams are really good thinking about features and then the benefits of the features. It
Mhm.
will speed things up a little bit. It's going to save some money. You can consolidate tools. There's some benefit to what they do inside their product. What I talk to companies about right now, especially right now, is wouldn't it be good if there was a way that you could attach what you sell to the biggest and most important initiatives that are going on at the company that you're trying to sell to? So even
Mhm.
in a tightened environment when the scrutiny is up, there are big things that this company that is trying to do, right? They might be expanding into South America. It might be have a whole motion around their consumer experience in their retail environment, retail division or something, right? If you go and talk to the CEO, that person will know that there's 5 big things that have to be done this year, this quarter, for the company to succeed. what if there was a way that we could think and have an idea? We don't know for sure until we talk to them, but we could come up and say, look, I know our stuff is cybersecurity technical stuff, but you know, I've got an idea. It might actually enable one of the big initiatives going on in the company right now. You said you're expanding your supply chain in Southeast Asia. I've got an idea that maybe there's a way that we can help that work better for you. You think
Mhm.
about what happened, if you attach yourself to these big initiatives, it usually has someone with a very big title who's responsible for it to the CEO. It's usually a business initiative that is driving up revenue or down costs. And there's a big budget, and we're just going to ask for a very, very small bit of that big budget and say, we're just going to help this be smoother. We're not asking for the full budget, right? We're just asking for a way to make this a little bit smoother. So I think about that, right? If we're trying to be relevant right now, we're trying to, you know, when the deal goes and they say, well, let's just stick what we have for a little bit longer. The thing in our favor is that, yeah, but your big initiative might be held back a little bit unless you modernize how you're doing this one thing that we're helping with. So if there's ways to do that, companies to think about that much higher level than just features benefit. There might be a way that they can be more relevant to these higher people.
Mhm. Can you give me kind of like a core definition of this type of selling? Like it's value selling, yes?
Yeah, I call
Wh
it value selling. Yeah, very
Yeah,
unvarnished.
yeah, what is I love value selling. I love the concepts, we did a lot of stuff at Audience first with value creation, and it kinda, it's very similar or maybe the same. But what is value selling, and what do you think are some of the challenges that security startups and companies face when they try to implement value selling?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the best definition, but this is what I work with, and it's the
Sure.
idea that we're helping our prospects see and get the business value of what we do. All
Mhm.
right. It's really as simple as that. It sounds simple, but in many ways it's not as simple to go and implement. You asked about some ways that we're perhaps not we're holding ourselves back, let's say.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and maybe you'll agree with this, is every company I've ever been at, um, the company orients around products. So you have product marketing managers, you have product managers, budgets are assigned to products, quotas are assigned to product. We expect this product to grow this much this year. Engineering teams are aligned around products. Support teams are aligned around products. And what ends up happening is we have this kind of built in lens on the world around our products. And I think when you have that lens around a product, you don't have the lens around the big value, the big thing that your prospect thinks about when they don't even care about your product, right? And what I've seen is that that translation from the whole world about product to then go and talk to a prospect, we just kind of leave it up to the sales team to go figure out. And frankly, Danny, it's part of the reason why I started doing what I'm doing is that I felt like sales teams were left to do a whole load of things on their own without much support to go do all this, right? It's like, yeah, just go figure that out. We're going to keep to our product world over here. When you think about what would hold back a company, you almost have to let go of that whole product thinking, and think much more about the lens of our prospects and the big things they care about. And that's not an easy thing to do because, the bigger the company is, the longer the tenure of the people, there in the industry, it's kind of the way we think. It's the way
Yeah.
that we think about things. And when people ask us what we do, we usually say this product and that product, right? But it's tough
Mhm.
to do that. So I think that's one big change that has to happen. Another one it's interesting on the sales side. I mean, I deal with sales teams mostly, is that it's an easy conversation to have with your prospect if it's surface level and it's about, basic pain, basic problems, and also the basic things that we do to help those things. That's an easy, natural, convenient conversation, both for us, but also the prospects we deal with, right? Because they've been trained over 20 years how to deal with salespeople and, the questions they ask, things like that. So when you come along and say, well, yeah, we don't want you to do that. We want you to put that to one side. And we actually want you to think about impact of what you're doing and not doing and things like that. That's not an easy conversation to have. I think it requires a certain amount of business acumen to be able to do it. You have to kind of understand things a lot deeper and the tentacles of where where your product might actually help out inside an organization. And then you got prospects who might be a little bit uncomfortable just meeting you half an hour earlier, telling you about, the real impact that's going on inside their teams or their companies. So it's not easy to do to go do that.
So how do we kind of overcome those challenges? Can you take me through kind of a step-by-step approach as best as possible? I imagine that it's a little bit more complex than step-by-step, right? There's a lot of work involved. It's a longer play. There's a lot of understanding that's involved, research that's involved. But to the best of your ability, like, if the audience could go out of this conversation today with some tangible, practical steps, what would that look like to kind of overcome the challenge?
I think the first thing for any sort of transition or change like this is that it has to be embedded into the leadership of the company. There's no point in working with the sales reps, but then the head of sales or marketing or the head of product goes back and talks about something completely different. So it's just a mindset that needs to be embraced at senior level. And if you had
Mhm.
that commitment all around, I talked to Andy Raskin, who's one of the messaging kind of marketing messaging guys out there, right? He works in companies all the time around things like this. And what he said is he just won't engage with a company unless it's with the CEO. Because he says,
Mm.
kind of what's the point? Because it's just going to get sidelined along the way. So I think that's the first step to do. The second thing is you almost have to look at your assets that are in the sales and marketing team and say, well, what is the alternative version of these that starts with the prospect and starts with persona in big value areas, as opposed to starts with, we got a product that does stuff. How do we
Yeah.
go position it? Because you don't want to leave that as a translation exercise to the sales team, because some will do it well and some will not do it well. And suddenly you'll get what I call go-to-market dispersion, right? Everyone will be doing their own thing, all sorts of different ways. So get some clarity around what the version is of that messaging so that it is around value and not about a product name with some features. And then the final thing that is where the rubber actually meets the road is how do you actually train the salespeople and drill the salespeople to handle things differently than what they're doing right now? This is hard to do because you go and hire some tenured salespeople. They've been selling a certain way for 10, 15, 20 years. They just don't change that overnight.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of think through the exercises. And, I think about what I do. There's probably 6 or 7 different kind of, I don't know, headings or areas that we work on. And it's all the fundamentals of selling. It's just done a little bit differently, thinking about value. I'll give you a great example. Anyone who's listened to a seller or anyone of listeners who've experienced this, I call it the death by discovery, right? You jump on the call and it's almost like the reps got this list of 45 questions. And no matter what you answer, the 45 questions, they're going to ask these questions again and again, right? And they can be really tactical and basic questions. And, if it's someone quite junior, they have to rely on something and, they kind of go through it. I kind of think about it and go, well, what if there was a different way of doing it that you actually started with pretty much right at the start around impact? And,
Mhm.
the first thing you go to and you don't ask about technical stuff and situational stuff. You say, okay, well, why is that a big deal internally? Why did you bring that up as something that is important and who else is affected by it? And, things like that. And suddenly you get into a much deeper conversation than saying, well, how many do you have? And when's the renewal due? And,
Mm.
all this type of stuff. So it's interesting as you take a sales team through that transformation, the ones that can kind of grasp onto that. But I'd say those are the three areas. The leadership team needs to be on board. You need to translate some of your existing stuff so it's not the old way. And then you need to really work with the team to help them make this transformation.
So I want to go down a route on the questions, which death by discovery is. I love that phrase. I'm a questions gal. I like to ask a lot of questions. Most of my podcast episodes, me asking questions. I rarely talk, but I, I'd love to get your input on what you think the best questions are from two different kinds of segments. Okay, you have those who have come in inbound, prospects who have come in inbound who are potentially evaluating you, have some interest in your solution or brand, or have some brand visibility. They know who you are. And then you have those who have no idea who you are. How do we start conversations for those two different segments as it ties to value selling and impact and understanding the business, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, think obviously the easier one is the inbound because someone's
Yeah.
coming in with some sort of intention, and I think our job is to find out why. It's not the part of it is to find out how and what they have and all the rest of what they're trying to achieve. But I think the much bigger thing to get to pretty quickly is why. I
Yeah.
think about this and I say, it might not just be this one person, it might be a team. But someone inside that company has decided it's worthwhile going and doing something to at least investigate an area. I wonder
Mhm.
why they've chosen to do that of all the possible things they could be doing. So, when I work with sales teams, we figure out, priority questions. So why is this a priority? Who thinks is a priority? If you were to solve this, who's going to be happiest? Right? Is
Mhm.
it a business unit? Is it a person? Is it the CISO? Is it the head of retail operations? Because something's happened that's holding back the retail segment. Trying to find out why this is something that's bubbled up to the top. Because in my experience, people just don't go and for fun go and have a whole bunch of conversations with salespeople, right? It's almost like a last resort. So there must be something, there's a big reason for wanting to do it. So asking all those why questions. When we're doing outbound, it's a little more difficult, right? We're trying to capture the attention a little bit. We're trying to at least get a conversation going. I think the goal really at the start is just to try and be human and have a relationship and get some sort of conversation going. The goal, I think, at the start, really early, right, if it is the outbound motion you're doing, is it's just to have the conversation, not to try and get much more, right? So
Yeah.
through that, you can show that you know what the heck you're talking about and ask questions around. One of the things I like is the idea that um, other people are looking at this area and they might be looking for a few reasons. Maybe your reasons are different if you were to look at it, but are any of these reasons valid for you? Right? It just helps people focus in a little bit, right? If I'm
Mhm.
if I'm in a first meeting with someone and I don't exactly know why I'm there, I just happen to say yes at some point or whatever. I need someone to narrow the lens a little bit, right? So tell me kind of the area we're in, tell me the sorts of things that you solve, and then we can start picking it apart, right? So I
Mhm.
kind of encourage sellers to have that kind of lens on presenting why other people might have purchased, the big reasons why, and then just seeing if that's something that resonates with them you're talking to or not. And maybe it might not be.
Did you mention PAR?
I don't think so.
Oh, no, no, I heard some, maybe I misheard. My apologies. Um, I mentioned, PAR because in an episode that I had a while back, and actually the one of our, CISO advisors, Dimitri, mentioned PAR. The moment you start building relationships, the higher your potential annual recurring revenue will
Oh,
grow.
okay.
PAR.
Par.
So the potential annual recurring revenue, if you build those relationships, you could take it anywhere with you. I thought that was fascinating. Not that all relationships are transactional or can lead to some kind of deal, but that referral deal could, from that person you have in a relationship with, could be attributed to PAR, right? So, I thought you had said PAR. I heard PAR, and maybe you
I
said
wish I
something else.
had. That's the first time
I
I've
know.
heard that, and I really like it
Well,
actually.
he made it up, and I thought it was fascinating. So
Yeah,
kudos to Dima on that.
yeah.
Speaking of, ARR and other metrics, what are some metrics and indicators, of success that security companies should be measuring with regard to value selling?
Um, well, I think the obvious ones are deal size,
Yep.
because you're hoping that you're solving much bigger problems and making bigger impacts than just the small ones. So therefore, you plan bigger deal sizes. I think deal velocity is another one. Um, just simple, how quickly are deals moving through the stages. So I would
Mhm.
start there. And then the other thing I would do as well is look where the current problems are in conversion through the funnel. So if the problem is, I don't know, POV to close or demo to POV, whatever it might be, is look at what we can measure to try and impact that and see if there's an impact on value selling in there. So, a couple of general ones and then look for the pinpoint ones that we can go after as well. That's how I would think about it.
Do you have any, concrete examples from, previous clients, no need to name names, that have effectively used value selling, and any kind of anecdotes on what we can learn from their approach?
The one, this is not a client of mine, but I would say they're known in the industry as having a very rigorous value selling program, and that's Zscaler. And, we can look at their progress in the last 10 years and go, well, it's probably working out okay for them. But they had, Dali Rajcik came in, I don't know exactly when, he came in from AppDynamics. And what I've heard from multiple people who were there, are there, left or whatever, is that there is a very rigorous program where they focus in on how we might help people. They have measurement process. They have value teams that come in, this whole way of working. And I've heard it's rigorous because I've heard from reps who've left that said maybe sometimes they felt it was too rigorous. So that to me says they've really thought through how best to go about doing this. Now Dali Rajcik just left and is now the president at Wiz. So it'd be fascinating to see how their selling motion changes over the coming months and quarters. But there's a company from top down have decided that's how they're going to do things, and it seems to have worked very well for them in the last few years, as far as I can tell looking in.
You mentioned the components to be successful in shifting to a value selling approach. And yes, hearing those three components, imagine and know that it's not simple, because if you're trying to change approaches, that's one, it's not just a tactical shift, it's a mindset shift. And I imagine that takes a lot of time. Let's say, you have kind of boots on the ground sales professionals who would like to take this approach, but top down, right? The top isn't yet ready for that shift. What do you think those professionals can do to evangelize or educate their stakeholders and show them that this is the way we should be doing things, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
One of my clients I'm working with, the reason that I got involved with them was that they'd hired some folks from Zscaler, from Palo, and a couple other places who brought this mentality in. And they were way outperforming the other people who were trying to sell the same products, right? And naturally, the sales leaders are kind of asking why. What are these people doing that's different? And the thing they kept saying was, well, this is how we sell. This is how we've been taught to sell. And it's not a tactical sell that's about quotes and discounts and things like that. It's a sell that's about, having this type of level of impact. So if you're somewhere, let's say you're in a sales team, there's 25 people in the sales team, and there's one or two of you that just believe this is the right way to do it, and no one else does. One is, I would encourage you to stick your ground, right? Don't dilute what you're doing well. Go off and do how you know how to sell, and then the results will come from it, and then you can evangelize, right? It's unless you've got the track record, it's tough to really change minds, right? You might get some lip service, you might get people to listen, all the rest of it, but you've got to go and do that. I'll tell you another quick story. I went somewhere, I don't know, 10 years ago now, a while back. And when I got there, I went in there to basically open up and run their enablement program. First time they were doing it properly. And the selling environment they were very experienced sellers, by the way. They were told your job is to get the meetings. The SEs will come in and do the demos, and they're going to see the magic, and big deals will happen. All right. And in some cases it did, right? But if you go, when I went in there and I asked everyone, what's the problem right now? It's really strange, Andrew. We have a massive bubble in the pipeline at demo given. I was like, well, why is there a bubble in the pipeline at demo given? Could it be the fact that we're rushing to demo and not doing some of the fundamentals about making sure that everyone, us and our prospects, are set up properly to understand what the demo is all about, right? And then I found there was 8 sellers who were doing especially well, let's say. And I went to all 8 of them and said, what are you doing? And they said, yeah, that stuff about just getting the demo, I don't do that. I go and engage with my prospects properly. I understand their environment. I figure out what's going on in the company. I talk to multiple different groups. I'm multi-threaded. And then after a while, I figured out, okay, this is how we can help this company the most right now. let's get the right group together from our side and their side to then go through a process of selling, right?
Yeah.
And it just took me to shine the light on that, to say, look, your most successful sellers are doing it this way, for then people to say, well, maybe we should do more of that and less of the other.
Yeah. You know, it reminds me of a lot of the stuff that we were focusing on in the value creation course that we had, was about a year ago, year and 2 months ago. We had a cohort, and Dimitri was mentioning you need to first actually assess yourself, assess your product, and then assess the customer. Like, are you going through all of those assessment phases and really taking a look at yourself to understand the whole environment, not just on the customer side, but your side as well, and your people, right? Um, so that it's aligning across the board, right? So there's a good fit for progress, not just in our organization on the vendor side, but in the organization on the customer side. Remind me to share that with you, the spreadsheet and how we kind of broke it down. He used
I love that approach. Yeah.
I think the CMMI model or the NIST model, something like that, like aligned the value creation to the security frameworks, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll show that to you. Um, all right, I want to go to the fun part. I mean, this has been absolutely fun talking about this, but this is the juicy part where we hit up the shit list. So, in your experience working with security firms, what's one of the worst things you've seen a vendor do?
I might get myself in trouble with this one. So when I said that I started in cybersecurity in 1998, I did. And the company I did it with was a company called Network Associates. And that was for those, many people won't remember or know that name, but it was let's call it the formation of version 2 of McAfee. And that's a brand name, many people recognize, but essentially at that time it was an enterprise selling company, not McAfee right now, which I think essentially is a consumer selling company. But, and we had a very aggressive, leader, CEO and management team that went with it, and, some really good people in there. And how much detail do you want me to go into, Danny? A long time or a short time? What's
We have all the time in the world, by the way.
Okay.
So a good 30 minutes, let's just say. So
Okay.
don't feel constrained with time.
So, and maybe those on the vendor side, the selling side will resonate with this, right? So I moved from the UK, where I'm from, to the US in January 2000. I picked up my territory in Silicon Valley, and the first, like, good seller, what do? You find out, okay, what customers are in my territory? What's my install base? Where's my renewals? Things like that. And, I did the research, and there was one company in there that was buying a lot of software from us, like, inordinately more than everyone else. There's a company called, I think it was NetTools Inc. It was called. And I thought, God, that's amazing. They bought, I forget the number, but let's say they bought $5 million of security software. This was at a time when people didn't buy $5 million of security software, right? That's kind of interesting. And then I started asking questions. I said, so who's this NetTools company that's buying all the software? And I was told, don't worry about those guys. Just don't worry. It's something else. It's something else, right? I was like, okay, I don't understand, but sure. Okay. You're telling me not to worry about them. I'll forget about it. A few years later, our CFO got indicted for fraud as part of a process. And for those around that time, McAfee's share price went from about $38 to $4 in one day, because they got caught stuffing the channel, was the phrase that you hear, right? They were basically pre-selling products into the channel, counting it as revenue before the end user buyer had actually bought it. That was one thing they were doing. But the reason the NetTool came in, as they got themselves in a hole, and the real fraud was that they were selling into distribution, let's say $50 million, right, of software. Distribution wasn't getting the pull through from the resellers and from the buyers, but they wouldn't take more for us to hit our numbers next quarter, right? They're saying, stop, we can't, until we get rid of this stuff, we're not buying any more. So NetTools ended up being a reseller made up by I don't know if the CFO or something to do with McAfee. They were buying software out of distribution to say, look, it is coming out of distribution. Ingram, whoever it was, you should buy some more from us. And they're like, okay, sure. So they had this kind of quadrant they were doing of disti, the vendor, disti, reseller customer with NetTool helping flush through some of the numbers. And by the way, this is all public information. I'm not giving away anything. It was in the indictment of the CFO. It listed it all out, exactly how the scheme happened. But it wasn't until I read it in the indictment, I went, that's what NetTool was. It was a scheme to buy software at the distributor. So I kind of, I was early in my career in those days. And I remember thinking, God, I had no idea all this was going on. What a weird world I was living in at the time.
Well, generally, I ask what the alternative approach would be. It would be don't do that. Yeah, ethics, don't do that. Well, speaking of ethics, what is ethical today? Like, I don't know if it's a buzzword or not. I don't think it is, but like, some people cringe at the word ethical, right? Ethical marketing, ethical selling, ethical go-to-market approach. What, in your opinion, is ethical GTM?
I haven't given any thought. What I would say is the way that I see people selling and marketing these days is so much more, say, ethical or so much more attached to reality and the truth than it was 20 years ago. Let's say that, at the gate, right? Selling wise, absolutely very, very different world than it was back then. I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like, it's, and ethics is one of these things that's just not, I'm somewhat ethical. I'm half ethical or half pregnant. It's either you are or you're not, right? You're doing the right things. You're portraying yourself and your company in the right light. You're not lying about what's in the roadmap or what you're doing and things like that. You're just, being a proper, good human being. You can take things up to a line a little bit, but you don't cross the line. I don't know if that's a great answer, but I think that
Great answer.
it's like that old thing. I hate to drag your highbrow podcast into the dirt a little bit, but it's that old question from politics from wherever it was when someone tried to find porn, but you'll know it when you see it. Ethical or not ethical, you'll know it when you see it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I grilled you quite a bit today, and part of my vision for this podcast is obviously to have a bidirectional conversation. So if there are any questions you have for me, or you want to pick my brain, by all means, we can riff on anything.
I've got two questions for you. And one, you brought up ethics right now. Right now there's a hot topic right now about they call it the Gilly-Renan model of cyber starts and who's getting rewarded for what and all the rest of it.
Yes.
I don't want to put you in any uncomfortable, talking about things where people might be pissed off or whatever, but I don't know, what's your take on that? Because you were reading through what was going on. What's your take on it all?
I might have to hold back a little bit because I'm still processing my thoughts about it. Like, I really want to, it's not that I don't want to talk about it. I'm thinking of how to articulate this the best way as possible. But I would say I've seen it happen on a regular basis. I will say that I'm trying to create a different model right now that is ethical, that will contribute to the market, that will contribute to the practitioners and the CISOs, not just the CISOs, but also, boots on the grounds, managers, engineers, architects, analysts as well, so that everybody can share a piece of the pie. And when I say piece of the pie, I mean progress in innovation. I mean actual contributing to good security, not just money for the pocket, right? So I will hold off on like strong opinions there. It was a very compelling article. It's very prevalent. When I come out with a good opinion, I'm definitely going to share with you, and people will see it on LinkedIn. So that's the best I can do right now. I don't want to fire too early on an opinion. So if that makes sense.
I like you say that because I think it is easy to jump on the bandwagon and start shooting blanks at all those things that you read in the article. But
Yeah.
I mean, who knows, right? I think that I'm sure there's a bunch of truth there, and I'm sure there's some things that are probably need more investigation. But it was interesting, it kind of opened people's eyes, I think, to that's interesting if it goes that far into how people are rewarded. Who knows?
Yeah.
And the second question for you was, I talked a little bit about this whole moving off a focus of product and moving on to a focus of customers. if I'm working with one of my clients and helping them do that, what would you encourage them to do more to understand their prospects in target market so much better than they're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit on your podcast, and I'll echo it. First, we have to understand what we're doing wrong, like assess ourselves, right? What are we doing wrong with our current approaches? What is working? What is not working? But mostly, like, what is not working, right? Second is figure out what it is you need to know that you don't know, or what it is you don't know that you don't know, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like about our customer, right? And about our environment. We talked a lot about curiosity, deep curiosity, and I can't stress enough that that's a core, a great core trait for any sales and marketing professional or founder, and product owner as well. So figure out what it is you need to know, and then practice building your questions. You called it death by discovery, but really focus on, like, hone in on what those questions will be so that you understand the landscape of the customer, the landscape of yourself, and the landscape of your product and services, right? So you can tie everything together back to that core thing you need to know. Once you have that information, then you can tie in, right, the product value to the environment you assessed, and the data you got from those questions, if that makes sense. Uh,
Do you find that prospects, the potential customer, are they open to these conversations? Are they quite willing to help out to try and help everyone get better?
100%. I think that the more that you come in with an approach that you just want to, first of all, you want to get to know them on a human level, right? Like, I'm not expecting any transaction right now because we don't even know anything about you. But, my insights and my conversations have validated that they want to be treated like a human being. I mean, it's as
Mm.
simple as that. Um, they know that that we need to put food on the table. Let's be real. Like, they understand where we're coming from. They understand our roles and responsibilities. But when you come in from a more authentic human approach, and an approach that leads with that curiosity, the research, even the feedback, then they're more likely to help you progress in your role in organization, because they understand that by extension, that work you're doing is going to help them progress in their environment, and maybe answer questions that they cannot answer themselves, right? Um, so the feedback that I've gotten from practitioners is that yes, they're willing to help so long as you come in in a way that is there's no expectation for the wallet to come out immediately, right? Like,
Mm.
let's work
Yeah.
together to figure things out, right? Then and only then we can talk about what does my environment look like? What am I going through right now? What is the budget? Who am I having to deal with? How do we, overcome those challenges, together? So
I like that. You have to take away that barrier, right? That you're trying to sell me something after answering three questions. This could be a bait and switch. Um,
I also think that, let's be real. Like, I don't know who, I can't speak for anyone, right? But I think as a whole, we as go-to-market professionals need to take away that expectation that something will happen, right? Like, oh, I'm talking to him, so I'm going to close a deal. No, like, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, right? But chances and the probability for something to happen, even if it's not a deal for with that direct potential customer, but maybe it's a referral from them to their network, to their community. Like, you never know where that will take you. Um, and so if we remove that expectation that, oh yeah, I'm going to close this guy. I mean, you can
mhm.
to some degree have that maybe swagger, and feel confident, but overconfidence, I think, is uh, can be an issue, right? Let's not lie to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah. Yeah.
how many are actually in the market to buy right now? Or, so we had that conversation too, earlier this week. So, um, overconfidence I think there needs to be confidence, but overconfidence can be a killer. Confidence, humbleness, experience, curiosity. I think those are kind of core tenets of a good go-to-market pro, whether it's sales, product, founder, marketing. Um, that's my take, at least.
Yeah. I love that. I've heard people talk before about detachment from an outcome, right? You want to help people, you want to do the right thing, but you can't just be staring at the prize 3 miles down the road and going, well, that's what I want all the time, right? You gotta kind of detach from that and just have a more human conversation, I guess, with
Yep.
people. I like that.
Yeah. So we are heading towards the end of the session. I want to ask, are there any imparting thoughts that you want to, leave for our audience today?
I would something I passionately believe, it's something I dropped in the middle of our conversation about being bold. Um, I don't know. I mean, you look at what people are doing, it seems to be a lot of sameness in terms of how they do things, the tactics, the messaging, all sorts of things, right? I would just encourage people to say, be bold, right? It's just for many people, many companies, what do you got to lose? Uh, go and say some things that might ruffle some feathers. Go make a splash. I've interviewed people on my podcast, and I know them. Well, there was someone who isn't going to ruffle feathers and stand out or do anything different, and there's someone who's willing to, go and stand up and really believe what they're saying and talk about things in a different way. And I would just encourage anyone, do things differently. And a part of that is be a value selling sales team or marketing team. Go do that. If you think about your messaging, go do that.
Yeah.
Just go be bold and do things differently.
I love that. Echoing off what you said, I'm going to read something here from my notes that I pulled up earlier this week as I was looking for inspiration for some writing. Um, we are in a sea of sameness. I talk a lot about, shady tactics and that many sales and marketing professionals, launch or pursue. I pulled up this note that I had back in, let's see when this note was. This note was back in 2021. So literally almost 3 years ago, July 2021. And I spoke to a gentleman, Louis Grenier. I mean, by this time, I've mentioned him so many times on this podcast.
Love that
He,
guy.
he owes me. So he has the podcast in his company, Everyone Hates Marketers.
Yeah.
I've been listening to that and following his stuff for a while. I had met him. We had a one-on-one session 3 years ago when I was kind of at a crossroads. I was like, okay, I can continue doing the same old crap that's not resonating, or I can go a different direction. And I feel like I'm on the verge of something. This was literally right before I launched Audience First. And he told me one piece of great advice. And again, echoing on what you're saying on being bold. He said, you got to be spicy, and spices to something. So what that means is, um, the recommendation is identify the brands and the personalities and the companies you like. Take one thing you love and list down their behavior, not the features. List down what they say, what they do, how they do it in detail. List down what they don't do, what is not there. And you will find that you'll be able to kind of develop something that is to something because of that assessment. And you will find so much inspiration about being to something. So really, like another thing that he says is, bear with me. He says, don't go after the middle of the map, right? Go to the edge, go to the barrier or outside that barrier, so that you're differentiating yourself and potentially resonating, and also getting that visibility and eyeballs. So I love that. Find the spice, basically, is what he said.
Find the
Uh,
smile.
find the spice.
Yeah, I listen to Louis on his podcast all the time, and I love his approach. I really do. I find it very inspiring.
Yeah.
I wish I was as good
Yeah.
at it as he is and what you've been doing, but it's very inspiring.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, I think you're on a roll. I love your content. I love your podcast. Where can people find you?
Best ways on LinkedIn. I believe I'm the only person in cybersecurity called Andrew Monaghan. That's Monaghan, and I have the cyber GTM Talk podcast, the cybersecurity go to market talk podcast as well. You find me there.
I love it. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Andrew, you're always welcome back.
Thanks, Danny. It was great fun to chat to you.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Audience First. We are out.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.